This will be a short, unscripted video demonstrating a procedure turn. I'll be using the ILS into runway 8 at Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'll bring up that chart now. Would really be helpful if you pulled this chart up either on a second monitor or printed it out. So if you need to pause the video, now would be a good time to do that. It'll make a lot more sense if you can go over this chart in your hand or on a second monitor. The procedure turn that we'll be flying is depicted right here. This is what we'd call a standard procedure turn. It's a 45-degree turn followed by a 180-degree turn. We'll explain that here in a little bit. And we'll be flying the procedure from the Albuquerque VOR, which is one of the initial approach fixes you see here, IAF. There are two others. Falksu is an initial approach fix, and also Horrig down here is an initial approach fix. The purpose of a procedure turn is really to accomplish a course reversal. We are currently about 5 miles from, this is approximately our present position, we're currently about 5 miles from the Albuquerque VOR, and we are headed westerly towards the Albuquerque VOR presently. And when I bring the flight sim screen back up, I'll kind of explain where we're at and how I've got the cockpit set up presently. Essentially, we're set up for the landing. The simulator is paused right now as we go over the chart. Excuse me. So a procedure turn is required anytime you need to perform a course reversal. If we were arriving from the west and we were able to fly direct to the Albuquerque VORTAC and begin the procedure from Albuquerque, we would not need to perform a course reversal if we could enter that approach directly. Consequently, if ATC were vectoring us in, the procedure turn would not be necessary. And also, again, if we can enter that procedure without the need for a course reversal. You'll also see if we were to begin the procedure from Falksu or Horrig, you'll see here it says no PT. It says that on both. And that essentially means that if we enter the procedure from Falksu or Horrig and flew the DME arc, we would essentially be flying straight in to the Albuquerque VOR, and there would be no need to fly this procedure turn. There are a couple different types of procedure turns that you have to fly as published. This is one of them. This is a standard procedure turn. Again, it's essentially a 45-180. There are others, a couple others that you are required to fly as published. One of those would be the teardrop procedure turn, and the other would be the hold in lieu of procedure turn. Both of those are outside the scope of this video. So I'll try to keep focused on the standard procedure turn you see in front of you. There are other ways to accomplish a procedure turn. There are many other ways to accomplish a procedure turn. So if a procedure turn is required, but it's not published, it's not one of these three types of procedure turns that we have to fly as published, you can really accomplish that procedure turn any way you want. There's an 80-260 procedure turn. The one I prefer is the 90-270 procedure turn, which essentially puts you back to your starting point in a reverse course. That's the 90-270. That's the one I prefer. And as a matter of fact, when I was setting up for this procedure turn after the departure out of Albuquerque, heading off to the east, I did perform a 90-27 procedure turn to get back on course direct to Albuquerque. Essentially what we'll do then is, again, we are somewhere over here flying westerly towards Albuquerque, so this being west. We're going to overfly the Albuquerque VOR, and as we overfly the Albuquerque VOR, we're going to pick up and fly outbound on the 259-degree radial from the Albuquerque VOR. Once we're established on the 259-degree radial, we can begin the procedure turn whenever we choose. The only requirement is that we're going to stay within this 10 DME arc, as that's not a whole lot of room for playing around. I mean, we need to get established on that 259-degree radial fairly quickly. So essentially, once I'm established on that 259-degree radial, I will begin my 45-degree turn to the right, which will put us on a heading of 304 degrees. We'll fly that 304-degree heading for 1 minute. We'll start the chronograph as soon as we roll out on a heading of 304 degrees. We'll fly that course for 1 minute, and then we will make a left-hand turn. This is the 180-degree left-hand turn to a heading of 124 degrees, and that will be our final, that will complete the procedure turn, and then from there, from 124 degree heading, we will intercept and fly inbound on the 079 front course for the ILS runway 8 into Albuquerque. Essentially, again, the whole idea and when we need to perform a procedure turn is simply when we need to execute a course reversal. A couple other things that are important here as we look at this. I'm approaching from the east, so my minimum safe altitude was 11,900 feet. I've already passed this mountain range here, so I've begun a descent. In fact, I'm level at 8,000 feet. You'll see here in a few minutes. A couple other things that the chart's going to call for an altitude of 8,000 feet passing inbound on the Albuquerque VOR. So once we're inbound on the procedure turn and we pass Albuquerque, we will be at an altitude of 8,000 feet, and then we'll step down to an altitude of 7,400 feet by Sunport, which is the final approach fix on this procedure. All right, I'll take you back into the cockpit, kind of explain what we've got going on here. We are fully set up for the approach on the right side. On the left side, I'm set up for the procedure turn, and in doing so, what I've done is I've dialed in the Albuquerque VOR 113.2. I've got that information displayed on my navigation display. We're currently 5.1 miles to the east of the Albuquerque VOR. The other thing I've done is I've set the outbound course of 259. Again, we'll establish ourselves on that 259 outbound radial from Albuquerque. Once we're established on that, we'll begin our right-hand turn to a heading of 304. That's the 45-degree right-hand turn. Keep in mind, it's not always a right-hand turn, and so you need to make sure that you're making the appropriate heading correction in the procedure turn. We're fully set up for the landing. The auto brakes are set. We're below 10,000 feet, so we've got our fixed landing lights out, runway turnoff lights on. I've got the decision altitude here of 5,522 feet dialed in. I'm currently flying at approximately 173 knots. We're slowing to a speed of 170 knots here, as you can see on the MCP, and I've got flaps 5 out. Okay, I will unpause the sim. It's going to take just a moment for the sim to update the time here, so bear with us. Okay, just inside of 5 miles now on our way to the Albuquerque VOR. Right now I'm flying using the radiomagnetic indicator needle here, the green RMI needle that you can see appearing and disappearing as I select it on the EFIS control panel. But essentially all I'm doing is I'm adjusting my heading select knob to reflect the direct course to Albuquerque. You'll notice that as we get closer to Albuquerque, this RMI needle, just like the CDI or the HSI, would become very, very sensitive. As we get closer to the station, you'll see this RMI needle start to swing around as we pass the station. You don't want to chase the needle. We're headed direct to Albuquerque VOR right now, and as we're inside of 3 miles, it's going to begin, and you can see it now, to begin to become quite sensitive. We won't chase that needle. Once we fly over it, we're going to quickly as we can, we're going to pick up this 259 degree outbound radial. In the spirit of time, and I like to keep these videos, 20 minutes or less. It's not always possible. I think we'll be able to do that here. In the spirit of time, I will end this video once we are fully established on the instrument approach. So hopefully somewhere prior to the final approach fix, we'll be able to end this video. The scope of this video is simply to demonstrate the procedure turn. And you can see now the RMI needle is giving us a 180 degree turn here. We're overflying the Albuquerque VOR as we speak. And I've a little bit of a right-hand turn here on a heading of 265 to establish ourselves in that 259 degree radial. You'll see the RMI needle begin to track here where the tail end corresponds to 259 degrees, and the CDI needle is coming in here. Go ahead and arm the VOR. We remember all along that we need to stay within that 10 DME arc. As soon as I'm established on this radial, I'll begin that right-hand turn to the 45 degree right-hand turn to 340 degrees. see from the FMA here, the VOR is armed. And once we fly into that radial, this will turn green once we've captured it, which is going to happen presently. It's no coincidence that the CDI needle is coming into center at the same time the RMI needle reflects that we're in the 259 radial as well, so the VOR is captured. We're at 4.2 miles out now as we roll out on this radial, which we have now. So we're fully established now on the 259 degree radial outbound. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my heading, MCP heading to 304 degrees, which will be our 45 degree right-hand turn to begin the procedure turn. And I'm going to do that now. So I'll go into heading select. When we roll out on that 304 degree heading, I'll start the chronograph. But for right now, I no longer need the Albuquerque VOR dialed in. So I'm going to dial in our ILS frequency of 111.9 and the front course, which is already reflected on the right side of 079 degrees. And as we roll out on this heading here of 304 degrees, I'm going to start the chronograph. And I tell you what, I lied to you. I am going to continue to use the Albuquerque VOR here for a little bit. The reason I'm going to use that is for this, is for our distance. I want to make sure we stay within that 10 dB. It's close. I mean, it's a tight procedure. 10 nautical miles to get established on radial and fly outbound for a minute at a 45 degree angle. It keeps it pretty tight. 20 seconds to go here. We'll begin our turn inbound. And it's actually, we don't call it the inbound leg until we are actually inbound to Albuquerque. Okay, so we can begin that left-hand turn now to a heading of 124. This is the 180 degree left-hand turn. We're going to go ahead and switch over now to the ILS. This will be our final heading adjustment, and from here we will intercept and proceed inbound on the ILS. So we can go ahead and arm the localizer, which again is reflected in the FMA. 8,000 feet is where we want to be. Passing the Albuquerque VOR, we will continue our descent down to 7,400 feet. See the VOR, the localizer is now captured. Since the localizer is captured, we can go ahead and set the missed approach heading of 81 degrees in our MCP heading window. These procedure turns are really very smooth. I mean, you can see we're rolling out, very comfortably rolling out and establishing on this localizer. The VOR, if you look at the chart, the VOR is 12.1 DME out on the ISPT, which is the localizer for runway 8. So when our DME hits 12.1, we'll begin our step down descent down to 7,400 feet by SUPA. I can go ahead and set that MCP altitude window. Set the chronograph here. We're done with that. So we're fully established now on the localizer. Still 17 miles out on the localizer. There's a couple ways you can look at the DME to decide when we're passing the Albuquerque VOR. Alternatively, we could dial that in on the right side. We could display that data on the navigation display here. We could do that a number of different ways. So we're 4 miles from Albuquerque VOR presently. We could either go by the VOR, which would be fine, the DME on the VOR, or we could go by the DME on the localizer. On the localizer again, Albuquerque's 12.1 out. Typically like to maintain between 170 to 180 knots until the outer marker. Outer marker is more of a namesake. It's, you're typically about your 5 mile fix. Sunport's about 8.5 miles out. That's the final approach fix. And that kind of just gives us an idea of when we're going to start to further set up for the approach, to continue to slow the aircraft down and get the gear out. You see the glide slopes become active here at about a mile before the Albuquerque VOR. Go ahead and start a level change descent now down to 7,400 feet. And you can see the RMI needle giving us an remaining return here as we pass the Albuquerque VOR. No longer need that information, so I'll go back to the ILS on the right side so that both the left and the right autoflight system are set to the same raw data. There would not have been anything wrong with going ahead and picking up that glide slope as we pass the Albuquerque VOR. Nothing wrong with that at all. The way I chose to do it is to go ahead and fly that step down descent down to 7,400 feet to pick up the glide slope by Sunport. We're leveling off here at 7,400 feet. We're on the approach mode. As we intercept the glide slope here, to get the gear down, which we're doing now, and we'll slow the aircraft down to my flaps 5 minimum maneuvering speed, with the remainder of our exterior lights out, engine ignition to continuous. As we're approaching the flaps 5 minimum maneuvering speed and the outer marker, we go to flaps 15. You see MCP speed down to flaps 15 minimum maneuvering speed. We're going to arm the speed brake. As we approach flaps 15 minimum maneuvering speed, we're going to go to our landing flaps, which in this case is flaps 30. I'll set the VREF plus wind correction. We don't have much of a wind component today, so we'll give it a couple of knots. Go through the landing checks. For the landing checks, gear down 3 green, flaps 30 green light, speed brake is on, ignition continuous, landing check is complete. I'll continue the video through through our decision altitude here of 5,522. That's where I'll end the video. See here, about 1,650 feet. We're fully established on the instrument approach. We're on the glide slope. We're on the localizer. Speeds at VREF plus wind correction. Gears down. Flaps set. Speed brakes on. This is what we would call a stable approach. And we want to make sure that you're stable no later than about 1,000 feet. That you want to be stable in the approach. If you're not stable in the approach by 1,000 feet, it really is a good idea to go around. Which is why it's essential, while you're at cruise prepping for the arrival and the approach, that you brief the missed approach procedure. So that was the procedure turn, and that specific type of procedure turn again is just a standard procedure turn. There are a couple others that I will address in future videos. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Now that we're approaching our decision altitude here, I'll go ahead and end this video. I appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of it.